There comes a time when the storms that once shook your core no longer stir you. The words, the actions, the chaos that used to unravel your peace now pass through you like a faint breeze. What once felt like a dagger to your heart now barely ripples in your soul. This isn't numbness. It's a quiet, unshakable strength. It's the moment you realize you've outgrown the emotional whirlwinds that once defined your reactions. You don't hate those who once triggered you. You simply no longer resonate with their frequency. This is the sacred shift, the evolution of your spirit, where you step into a sovereignty so profound that the chaos of others no longer pulls you into its orbit. This is not about shutting down or building walls. It's about rising to a place where the drama that once consumed you feels like a distant echo from a life you no longer inhabit. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the psyche, spoke of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, not through endless reaction, but through a deepening inner stillness. When you stop reacting to every emotional trigger, you're not closing your heart, you're claiming it. You're choosing to protect your energy, to honor the sacred life force within you. This shift is not indifference, it's liberation. It's the moment you stop borrowing someone else's chaos and start living from your own center. Subscribe to Side Effects now and join a community dedicated to healing, growth, and transformation. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next step on this journey. It's time to step fully into your power. When you're entangled in someone else's emotional patterns, your feelings aren't entirely yours. They're provoked, shaped, and pulled by dynamics you may not yet fully see. But as you do the inner work, facing your shadows, untangling your wounds, sitting with the discomfort until it no longer owns you, something remarkable happens. You stop identifying with the chaos. You no longer feel the need to argue, to explain, or to carry the weight of someone else's unresolved pain. You observe, not from a place of coldness, but from clarity. Not from apathy, but from a higher perspective. This is emotional neutrality, not the absence of care, but the presence of self. The difference between detachment and avoidance is profound. Avoidance comes from fear, a refusal to face what hurts. Detachment, however, is born from integration, from years of tracing your pain back to its roots, understanding its story, and releasing its grip on you. When you've sat with your wounds long enough, they no longer dictate your reactions. Sacred space opens within you, a space where you no longer need to fix, defend, or prove anything. This isn't the silence of punishment, it's the silence of self-respect. It's the stillness of a soul that refuses to let its nervous system become a battleground for someone else's unresolved patterns. Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will steer your life, and you'll call it fate. Emotional detachment, when it comes from this deep inner work, is a sign you've taken the pen back from fate. You've stopped reacting to projections as if they were truth. Their anger isn't yours to carry. Their confusion isn't your burden. Their validation isn't your sustenance. You no longer react because you no longer resonate with their chaos. This isn't indifference, it's evolution. It's the moment you realize your psychic energy, what Jung called libido, the life force of your soul, is finite and sacred. You begin to guard it with reverence, understanding that every reaction is a transaction, a piece of your energy spent. When you react impulsively, lashing out, over-explaining, chasing closure, or spiraling in overthinking, you're giving away your life force. It's not just time or peace you lose, it's a piece of your identity. You become caught in someone else's storm, pulled into a performance that pulls you further from your center. Over time, this leaves you not just tired, but disoriented, disconnected from who you truly are. The cost of emotional reactivity is steep. It leaves a residue, a depletion, a quiet that feels like emptiness rather than peace. But when you begin to track where your energy goes, when you notice how a single word, a single moment, can hijack your nervous system, something shifts. You realize not everyone deserves access to your emotional space. Your presence, your care, your listening, these are not obligations. They are sacred gifts, offerings you choose to give, not demands you must meet. What once felt like a symphony of drama, intensity, emotional highs and lows, now feels like noise. Not because you've lost your ability to feel, but because your inner frequency has changed. The chaos that once mirrored your unhealed wounds now feels foreign, misaligned. You no longer dance to its rhythm. Instead, you choose the quiet path, the one that doesn't demand applause, but offers deep rest to your soul. To reclaim your energy is to reclaim your life. It's to say, I no longer pour myself into conversations that drain me. I no longer perform for those who choose to misunderstand me. I no longer sacrifice my peace for the illusion of connection. This isn't detachment, it's devotion. A devotion to your wholeness, your clarity, the life you're building from within. The more you protect your energy, the clearer you see. The more you step back from reactive cycles, the more deeply you feel your own presence. This is what it means to evolve, not to rise above others, but to return to yourself so fully that you no longer spill into every moment of chaos. You've learned to guard your energy, not out of fear, but out of respect for the person you're becoming. The habits that once kept you in emotional survival can no longer sustain the woman or man you are now. This shift is the beginning of true freedom. There's a stillness that follows this kind of emotional growth, a quiet that feels unfamiliar after years of defining yourself through reaction, entanglement, or the need to be understood. This withdrawal can feel like exile at first, but it's not exile, it's initiation. Jung called this the sacred solitude of individuation, a necessary separation from the collective noise to reclaim what is most true within you. When you no longer resonate with dysfunction, you may find yourself alone, not because you're unlovable, but because the old connections were tied to a version of you that no longer exists. As you rise into emotional neutrality, you become harder to reach, especially for those who only knew how to connect through chaos. Your calmness feels like distance to those addicted to drama. Your boundaries feel like rejection to those who relied on your lack of them. Your silence echoes so loudly, it forces others to confront parts of themselves they've avoided. This is the cost of growth. You lose people, but you find yourself. You grieve not just them, but the version of you who needed them, who tolerated the noise, who played the role of fixer, peacemaker, or emotional anchor. That version fades, and what remains is new, quiet, and vast. The mind that was once consumed by emotional flares now holds space for clarity. The heart that once burned with reaction now beats steadily, unmoved by what once felt unbearable. This space, though sacred, can be disorienting. You'll long for someone to meet you here, to see your growth, to sit in the stillness with you. Sometimes they will, but often this is a path you walk alone, at least at first, because most people aren't ready for the version of you that no longer plays the roles they assigned. Jung taught that individuation requires us to shed the persona, the CTB, mask we wear to fit in, and face what lies beneath. This shedding is raw, quiet, and unglamorous. It's the soul's return to authenticity. When loneliness comes, don't fear it. Honor it. It means the noise is gone, the distractions are fading, and the codependent ties are dissolving. In 2EV, this quiet, something beautiful awakens. You are no longer defined by what you tolerate. You are shaped by what you protect. And while the world may not yet know how to hold this new version of you, you do. You hold yourself in stillness, in sovereignty, and you whisper the words you've waited a lifetime to hear. You are enough. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Comment below, I am enough. Share a moment when you chose your peace over chaos. What did it teach you about your strength? Let's inspire each other in the comments. This journey of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's forged in the fires of countless storms, betrayals that broke you open, and patterns that repeated until they revealed their lessons. You didn't detach to prove a point. You detached to heal. You no longer feel the need to defend your truth because it no longer needs defending. You no longer chase closure because peace is something you give yourself. The soul that once begged to be understood now simply breathes, free from the weight of emotional negotiations. You're not interested in convincing anyone of your worth, your perspective, or your love. That battle is over. You've stepped out of the arena because you realize the real conflict was never between you and them. It was between your higher self and the parts of you that settled for less. Now, you've reclaimed your energy from relationships that only knew how to take. You've retrieved your voice from conversations that valued your silence. You've stopped editing your truth to keep others comfortable and started honoring your evolution, even when it leaves others confused. Their confusion isn't your responsibility. When they say you've changed, they're right. But what they're really saying is, I can't find the version of you who made my comfort more important than your truth. Smile at that. Not with arrogance, but with grace. You remember how long you held on to that version of yourself. You remember what it cost you. You're not who you were, and that's not a flaw, it's the point. The shedding, the silence, the distance. It wasn't a disappearance, it was a becoming. You've become someone who can sit with their own soul without needing noise to fill the space. Someone who knows peace isn't passive. It's a power forged in fire. Someone who no longer needs to prove anything because they've found their place within. The world may not bend to you, but you no longer bend for what doesn't honor your growth. You've outgrown your survival patterns, and in doing so, you didn't just change. You returned to the self that always existed beneath the fear, the masks, the projections. This is not the end. It's the emergence. There was a time when their chaos mirrored your unhealed wounds. Their anger sparked your guilt. Their withdrawal triggered your fear of abandonment. Their inconsistency made you question your clarity. The emotional whirlwind wasn't just about them. It was about the parts of you that still believed love had to be earned, that safety came from pleasing others. Jung spoke of projection, the way we cast our unacknowledged pain onto others, seeing in them what we haven't yet faced in ourselves. When you hadn't yet met your own pain with compassion, you attracted relationships that reflected it back. The chaos wasn't random. It was a mirror, showing you where your healing was incomplete. But as you evolved, something shifted. What used to spark a spiral now barely flickers within you. The guilt trips, the sudden silences, the emotional jabs, they used to cut deep. Now, they pass through you like a breeze. You feel their energy, but you no longer absorb it. This is how you know you've grown. Your nervous system, once wired for hypervigilance, begins to rest. It no longer flares at every provocation, not because you're numb, but because you're no longer in resonance with dysfunction. The trauma bonds dissolve when the trauma no longer holds power. You now respond from your center, from a place of integration, knowing their projections aren't your truth, their outbursts aren't your fault, and their inability to love deeply isn't a reflection of your worth. This emotional neutrality, which some may call coldness, is your liberation. The mirror that once reflected your wounds now stands empty, and in that emptiness, you see clearly. You don't need to fix them to feel okay. You don't need them to change for you to feel whole. You no longer look to others to complete you. As Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." You've awakened. The mirror is no longer a battlefield. It's a lens through which you discern what you will and won't engage with. You no longer react to chaos because it no longer speaks the language of your soul. Emotional neutrality is the sacred outcome of shadow integration, the process of bringing your hidden, denied, or exiled parts into the light. It's the quiet arrival at a place where you no longer need to react to feel real, rescue to feel worthy, or prove to feel seen. Jung said, "That which you resist persists." Before you integrated your shadow, you were easily hooked by others' emotional games. Their projections pulled you in, and you found yourself trapped in roles you didn't choose. The fixer, the forgiver, the absorber of blame. But when you face your shadow, the anger you suppressed, the fear you hid, the vulnerability you masked, the hooks dissolve. The need to control fades, as does the impulse to rescue others at the cost of your own peace. You've seen what happens when you give your light to someone ruled by their shadow. You become depleted, anxious, unsure of where they end, and you begin. But now, you know better. You've drawn your energy back from the battlefield. You no longer offer your soul as a canvas for their projections. When they try to provoke you, it falls flat, not because you're heartless, but because your heart is no longer for sale. They may call you distant, but that's because they can't access you through your old wounds anymore. The doors they once entered, your guilt, your need to please, your fear of abandonment, are sealed with the gold of self-awareness. You're not resisting them, you're simply not reacting. That's the difference. Neutrality is power, not passivity. It's the boundary that says, "I will no longer bleed to keep the peace." It's the soft no that carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken yeses to yourself. It's the calm that arises when you know you're no longer at the mercy of someone else's storm. This is the gift of shadow work. You reclaim your energy, stop negotiating with dysfunction, and return to yourself as a home, not a defense. You are no longer who you were when the pain began, and that's the point. Stillness is often mistaken for coldness, but it's clarity. It's the presence that no longer performs, the silence that no longer explains, the energy that no longer bends to keep dysfunctional dynamics intact. When you stop participating in someone else's chaos, not by attacking, not by blaming, but by simply stepping back, you become a mirror they can no longer avoid. Jung taught that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress or deny, doesn't vanish because we ignore it. It hides in our words, our reactions, our relationships. When you stop reacting, their shadow surfaces. Your stillness disrupts their unconscious patterns. They can no longer project their pain onto you because you've stopped being their emotional outlet. This is the quiet revolution of emotional neutrality. You're not punishing them or ignoring them. You're refusing to lose yourself for their comfort. For those who haven't faced their own wounds, this feels like abandonment. but it's a revelation. Your lack of reaction says, I am no longer available for projections. That truth, even unspoken, is powerful. Most people are used to provocation being met with defense, guilt with explanation, chaos with rescue. But when you hold your ground without aggression or justification, you create a vacuum. Into that vacuum rushes everything they've suppressed: fear, insecurity, shame. Your neutrality doesn't soothe their ego. It awakens their shadow. They may call you cold, but don't mistake their discomfort for your wrongdoing. You're choosing to preserve your energy, stepping out of the psychic contract that demanded you carry their emotional weight. That's not cruelty, it's individuation. Jung said, only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. Your stillness looks like detachment, but is deep care for yourself. Your withdrawal feels like distance, but is a sacred return to your truth. You didn't stop caring. You stopped abandoning yourself for someone else's comfort. You've become a mirror that invites others to meet themselves fully, without escape. There comes a moment when the storms that once uprooted you pass through without disturbance. The voices that once pierced your self-worth now echo into a void they can no longer reach. This isn't numbness, it's evolution. It's what happens when your soul steps off the battlefield of projection. Jung reminded us that every unhealed wound seeks resonance, drawing us to others who reflect our unresolved pain. Not to hurt us, but to guide us toward wholeness. Once you've faced your shadow, tended your wounds, and returned to your center, the chaos that once called your name no longer holds power. It bores you. It no longer sings your song because you've stopped dancing to its rhythm. You're no longer in resonance with blame, manipulation, or codependent intensity. What once felt magnetic now feels empty. What once triggered deep responses now passes through you like a breeze through trees, noticed but not absorbed. This is what peace does. It rewires your nervous system, rewrites your inner script, and makes you unavailable to the roles you once played. Those who knew you in chaos can't reach you now, not because you've blocked them, but because they only knew the version of you that danced in their storm. Now that you've stepped out, they're left shouting into a silence they can't penetrate. This is the beauty of emotional neutrality. It's not the absence of love, but the presence of alignment. You've outgrown the idea that love means sacrifice, that peace means silence, that connection comes at the cost of your soul. You no longer feel compelled to convince, defend, or fix, because you've realized your peace is non-negotiable. This frustrates those who fed off your reactions, because without your energy, their drama loses its power. The script collapses, the dynamic dissolves, and they're left with themselves. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This becoming looks like a soft refusal to re-enter cycles you've healed your way out of. It's a quiet liberation from emotional traps disguised as connection. It's a sacred unavailability to anything that no longer matches your vibration. When they say you've changed, they're right. You didn't lose your feelings. You stopped lending them to stories that made you forget who you are. From this place of inner calm, you stand not above, but beyond. Beyond the chaos, beyond the pull, beyond their reach. They may say you feel nothing, that you've gone cold, that your silence hides anger or resentment. But the truth is deeper. You're not numb, you're whole. What others see as emptiness is sacred fullness, an inner peace so steady it no longer flinches when provoked. Your presence is no longer reactive. It's rooted, sovereign. You didn't lose your capacity to feel. You expanded your capacity to discern. You didn't stop loving. You stopped leaking. You stopped handing your energy to dynamics that thrived on chaos, confusion, and control. You stopped carrying what was never yours to hold. In this stopping, you returned to something essential, your center. Jung taught that integration often looks like detachment, not because you've abandoned emotion, but because you've stopped identifying with its distortions. When your shadow is met and understood, your psyche no longer seeks suffering to feel alive. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or reaction with connection. You've become the witness of your own story, no longer a character trapped in someone else's plot. This is emotional peace, earned through fire, forged through years of navigating projection, abandonment, and entanglement. The next time someone says, "You've changed," smile. Yes, you have. You didn't change to escape your feelings. You changed to feel them clearly, to love without losing yourself, to hold space for truth without collapsing under its weight. This is your power. This is your return. Comment below, "I am enough." Share a moment when you chose your peace over chaos. What did it teach you about your strength? Let's inspire each other in the comments. If this resonated with you, don't stop here. The next video on side effects will dive even deeper into healing, growth, and self-discovery. It might be the breakthrough your soul has been waiting for. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and join a community committed to truth, transformation, and real inner change. You're not alone on this path. I'll meet you in the next video, where we continue becoming who we were always meant to be.